Meeting to order. It's the Enterprise Committee meeting, and we're going to receive some updates here from MLMP and the port.
I think I just started this.
Any announcements or
record?
from the record? Okay, let's put everybody on the roll call first, I guess. Elvie, you want to start at that end?
Jennifer Johnston.
Elvie Gray
I'm
Jackson.
sorry.
Elvie Gray Jackson.
Dick Trainee.
Tim Steele.
Amy Boss.
Great. And any announcements or questions or anything from the committee members before we get started? I guess Steve, Fort is up, or whoever's going to be doing. Welcome.
For the record, I'm Steve Rebecco, Port Director, and I have with me today Todd Coles, who's the Port Engineer and our lead on managing the project management consultant for the Anchorage Port Modernization Project, and Mr. Lon Illich from CH2M, who is the project management consultant team lead here in Anchorage. And I'll turn it over to Todd to walk you through our latest report.
All right, thank you. We've handed out our report for this period, and I'll just go through the items that are new for this period. On the PMCM services contract with CH2M Hill, we, again, no change to the completed task orders. We still are indicating task order 1 and 3 being complete. We have no new task orders since our last update. The work in progress with respect to task order 2 is constant. We continue to staff the project management office and implement and maintain the project management plan. And there is some renewed work going on in implementing and maintaining our electronic document management system, which is a key component of managing the project. So that's some activities ongoing currently on that task order. On task order 4, the test pile work, the pre-construction conference with Kiewit was held on July 15th. The CM team is receiving and responding to contractor RFIs, requests for information right now. And we are still engaged in the Section 7 consultation with National Marine Fisheries Service to get our incidental harassment authorization. So that work is progressing. With task order 5 regarding precursor activities for hiring the designers of record, we have a finalized ship simulation and pilot evaluation report received from Safeguard Marine that documents and makes recommendations associated with that activity that occurred in early May. We'll talk a little bit about the outcome of that at the end of the report. We conducted petroleum, oil, and lubricants performance criteria meetings with the operators of those facilities to document the needs moving forward. And we also conducted a crane performance criteria meeting with Matson, the new owners of Horizon Lines, on July 23rd. And again, I'll speak to some high points of that at the end. On task order 6, we have a draft concept planning and programming report received from the CH2M team, and that's under review right now by the port. Task order 7, regarding North End stabilization, we are incorporating data from our site investigation work under task order 8 as we receive that. So, as I mentioned last time, we're working through a number of existing MOA vendor contracts to gather geospatial, survey, environmental, and geotechnical information to support the buildings, the North End stabilization work, and other activities on the project to close data gaps that we have. The mapping and the surveying work is underway. The environmental and geotechnical investigations are awaiting MOA purchasing action currently to execute purchase orders under existing vendor contracts, and we are confident that will happen this week. So we're very anxious for that to happen. On the overall project permitting task order 9, we, the port, have received the draft annotated permit matrix from the CH2M team, and we're reviewing that. That's a key document that outlines strategy alternatives that we're going to engage the agencies on, with a meeting to be scheduled. I think we're looking out to the last week in August right now for that overall agency meeting. So that's an important activity underway. We have no pending task orders under the CH2 on Hill contract, and we don't have any future task orders under development at this time. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lon to speak to the construction management aspect on the Kiewit contract.
Good morning. The Kiewit contract is in place, and as Todd stated, we have had the pre-construction conference. We're anticipating getting a schedule and a work plan from them shortly, but the geotechnical work, they're setting up to complete that fall of 2015. That was basically drilling out in the water. And then pile driving is planned to commence the spring of 2016. We've received, I believe, about 6 or 7 RFIs to date, and we've responded to all but one of them brand new. There's been no change in scope, no change in cost for the schedule. Everything's proceeding. We're still in the very early stages, but as far as scope changes for our contractor, there's been none, and as far as any scope changes or requested, there have been none from Kiewit either. So then, there's no question on that. I'd like to go to.
Well, let's see if we have some questions on it. You went through a lot of information in terms of the task orders. Are there any questions? Elvin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm honored to be here, although I'm not on the committee, but I do have a question. And the question is, I'm looking at the budget, and the total funding needed is $485 million, and you only have 126, and there's 358 that you still need to get. So what's the plans for that?
That was totally going to be my question, but I ask them every month that.
Well, I'm going to attempt to tag team with Mike. As I mentioned when we had this meeting last, this is going to have to be, it's not on the board to exclusively work this issue. We have to work closely with the administration.
So at this point, we have not made any changes to the port project funding plan as developed by the previous administration, which was essentially hope for the best. There is no secure source of funding for the balance of the project that's been described to you right now. There are a variety of efforts underway, primarily associated with state funding and potentially the recovery of previously expended funds through litigation with our previous partners, but none of that is in hand at this point. And so at this point there is no secure source of funding for the balance that's required, the several $100 million that are required. That's going to have to be a subject of administration and assembly review over time.
Yes. Go ahead.
Mike, when do we run dry?
The project team can tell you about.
We can answer that.
Because when I see this hole out there, I want to know.
Yeah, right, we need to get that further down the line.
If you would let me, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'll
Go ahead,
through
we'll ask all these
the
questions.
budget and schedule information, I think that will answer some of your
Yeah.
questions.
Thank you.
So as far as the budget report, it is essentially what you've been seeing. There's some minor adjustments in the columns, but basically you can see going through how in the functional areas how much we've spent to date, what's pending, and then what's available. There's been no changes in the estimate of funds needed or money needed to complete. And then the last column is the percent spent, and it is stated down in the bottom is the status of what we have available and what we need and the current funding sources. So then the cost curves themselves, we made an adjustment to those to try to make them a little more useful and to what we think needs to be seen. The first one is still the cost curve for the entire program. including funded and unfunded work. And what we removed is there was a baseline curve that really didn't add anything to the information being presented. It's really a scheduling function. So we now have the budgeted total and then the period actual total in blue, and with the accumulated curve showing for the budgeted total and well for both, but the budgeted total is the one you can see. And then on the next sheet, we wanted to, kind of snapshot in a little closer, so it's the same curve, but it is cost to date. You can see on the right side, that vertical blue line, that is the current data date. And so again, you're seeing the same information, the budgeted total, the period actual total by month from the beginning to currently. And if you look at the two lines, our actual is still running under our budget, and at this point essentially running parallel to it. So we're below budget on our items, cumulative. Then
What does this tell me, Judge? I'm sorry. In terms of, is this telling me that March we're going to be out of money, or?
No, that's the next slide.
To date.
That's just how we spent the money to date,
All right.
and how it's been being spent on a per month basis, cumulative. So then the next one I think is will answer your questions on when our current funds will be utilized. This is a different schedule than what you've seen in the past, and we think this will be more useful. This is, first of all, it's again broken up by the functional areas. As you can see, the project management, miscellaneous support, test pile, landside buildings, north extension, PL1, PL2, in the main marine terminal. If you look at the top heading, this is the currently funded work. This is what we feel, based on the funds that are available and the estimates for this work, that this is the work that we can complete. And as you can see, essentially by 2018, we will be at the end of our funded work. Within each area, you can see that there's various items: program management, procurement, permitting, and then construction. So the test pile program is fully funded. The landside buildings is fully funded. We do not have sufficient funds to do all of the north extension. We only have about half the funds needed at this point. We have enough funds to do one of the PLL1. We do not have enough funds to do PLL2 at this point. And then and I'm talking construction, strictly construction, I'm sorry. We can do all the planning, all the permitting, all the design, but we've run out of money to actually do the construction. And then for the terminals, again, we can do everything up to construction, but we cannot do any construction. We do not fund construction on terminals 1, 2, and the demolition of 3 at this point. So this gives you an idea of what we can accomplish, and what's not shown on this schedule, as I said, is construction of PLO 2, construction of Terminal 1, Terminal 2, demolition of Terminal 3, and the unfunded portion of the north extension. One thing I would like to note, we have made an adjustment to the schedule. Under the test pile program, construction, we have moved that performance period out to spring and to fit within the current contract requirements, and we've extended the permitting activity accordingly.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. And I think this is, when we originally were looking at this, we were looking at phase 1, 2, and 3.
And 4.
And 4. That's right, good point. And so this has been the ongoing conversation in this committee for the last couple of months. Okay, we know we have enough funding, so we can keep working, we can get going for a couple of years, but what is the strategy moving forward? Is it public-private partnership? Is it bonding? Is it, litigation? Money could come, but it could be in 20 years. You never know. It's against the federal government. They could ride it out forever, practically. So, well, it's not just the federal government. There's other people too. So that's really the crux of it. And so I think that's where we're looking to the administration to say, you really got to vet these options and give us some sort of idea. Now, Steve made it very clear in the last meeting that those conversations are starting, and, you know, they're just gonna need some time to figure it out, essentially, and see what really the realistic options are. So, though I was gonna ask a question, I didn't expect an answer today.
That's fine.
But it's going to be one for discussion, and I think there may not be one right answer. I think it may be a combination of all of the above. Whether it's litigation money, whether it's some sort of new type of hybrid partnership, and whether it's some sort of bonding mechanism, whether it's a straight bond or a revenue bond or whatever. I don't think you can get there by one only. I think you probably are going to have to combine multiple. But that's why I look to people that are much smarter than I am to give us those options and tell us, you know, what they think a good path forward is. But we do have a little bit of time, but, you know, my caution would be not to wait till 2017 to figure it out.
The key choice that needs to be made here in the near term is, do we keep working as if we're going to get several $100 million more dollars, and therefore apply our current funding for planning and design and permitting of those elements for which we don't have construction funding, or do we redeploy funds that we have right now and try to gain at least some functional improvements from the facility right now? And that's a choice that will have to be made in concert with the Assembly over the next couple of months. The previous administration and the plan that you've heard described essentially assumes we're going to get all $400 million. And we're spending the money we have now as if the next 250 to 300 million is going to show up. That may or may not be the right way forward. Clearly the Assembly's been comfortable with that in the past. I don't know, you know, how recently you guys have revisited that decision. We're just starting to evaluate that plan, and may indeed bring you a different recommendation, or endorse the current plan, and, you know, encourage you to support that effort going forward. So that's the big ticket decision that needs to be made shortly, because we're not going to know the answer to whether the money's coming or not. You know, under the most optimistic circumstance, it's going to take several years for that funding to be secured. And we're going to have to make a decision about how we spend the balance of the existing funds sooner than that.
Did you follow me?
I did, and Mr. Abbott, I think that's brilliant. I mean, I think that's exactly, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that's exactly it. And I think, you know, we can learn the lesson from SAP. Sometimes less variables actually gets the project done. And so if there is some sort of scaled down plan, I'm sure the administration will take into account potential efficiencies that could be had with the current plan versus, or if you scale it down, the option to be able, if those funds come, say from a lawsuit, then you can finish the, you know, whatever, the expanded plan. But I think, considering the fact, I mean, the original version, this is a scaled down version of the original.
Remarkably
So within the last 9 months, I would say, maybe time goes faster, but definitely within the last year, you know, we took a very large policy change in the scope of this project once already. And so, you know, that's something I think to consider, and this was the scaled down version. But the one thing we always have to be mindful of with the strategic, this is one of 13 strategic ports.
It's 23 now.
23 ports?
Yeah, 23 of which 19 are commercial seaports.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, but it's important for this region, and it's important for the state. So we have to consider, you know, future need, efficiency. We have to consider, you know, the military base right there and their use of the port. And we just don't want to, you know, shoot ourselves in the foot by making a knee-jerk reaction. So I'm glad that people are being very mindful of that.
A reminder, and Mike and I have talked about this as well, is the funding sources that we have now all have expiration dates on them.
Right.
So at some point, some interaction with the state to get those extended is going to have to take place. And, you know, I hear different stories about what the degree of difficulty is on that. I understand that the legislature is looking for opportunities to pull back unspent grant and bond money. We can go to zero rather quickly if we become a victim of that.
Well, I'm confident, especially with the port, and I think the administration and the assembly members, I can't imagine they would disagree with this statement, but I think we all recognize the importance of the Port of Anchorage, not just to the municipality, but to the state. And so I would be very shocked if we would lobby to maintain those funds, and I think we would get statewide support.
This is a money-making operation, and
Yeah, one
I
of the few.
assume we have outstanding bonds that some of the revenues that we have to use to pay down debt. But I guess my question is, well, my first comment is that this is a critical port, and it's a money-making operation. But beyond that, it's a critical port.
Yes.
And so I would hope that we would find a way to continue on a path, a reasonable spending path to implement our scaled down or scaled back or modified development plan.
And it's growing too. Project notwithstanding, the private sector is investing their own money in new development down there in the
Yes.
port right now as we speak. So they acknowledge the value of the facility to themselves and to the state. And getting the word out about that is important. I mean, we're not waiting for this project to become something. We're something now. And want to be able to stay in business for the next 75 years, and that's the point of this. We're not putting any new bells and whistles on it. We're just trying to keep it from falling in the water. God forbid we get another 64 earthquake level event.
And we're getting new customers, which is good.
Mike, we've got the President and the Secretary of State coming up here at the end of August.
We do.
If you get a chance, would you relay to them the importance of this Arctic port? Because this is a national security item beyond the commercial, desires of this port. My concern is national security and the ability. We've got a port here and an Army base, an Air Force base here, and we need federal dollars to ensure that port is always viable when a ship comes in to download to the military.
Gotcha.
Want their
It's on the
dollars.
list. In the voluminous time we expect to have.
Well, they're going to shut this place down, I understand, for a while, so you'll have lots of time in your hands.
Some could even go back to Washington and fly out with them and have their ears for the whole time.
Gary's got a nice point.
Maybe you can
The
call right
assembly
now.
guidance is always welcome.
Excuse me. Anyway.
You got to lay off
Oh,
that.
man. I
Yeah,
started
well,
laughing.
Chuck.
Jennifer, did you have any?
It's going to come from somebody in the state ain't got it.
You know what? I like your comments.
Chairman, my question is a little about the cash flow. Obviously, eventually if we bond for $350 million or something like that, we're going to be paying that off over a long period of time. What kind of cash flow do we have now? And so how many
You don't have
millions of
enough.
dollars worth of bonds?
You don't have enough.
Well,
Stop accounting for it.
the port already has $40 million in debt that we're carrying for what was the expansion project and loans that we took out to do that work. I think we're maxed as a partner.
Does Sheffield have an insurance policy?
Capacity and all, so we would obviously have to
And his
rely on
reference.
the city and
Maybe we need to
The
cash it
help
beneficiary.
us carry the load on that going forward.
That assumes the current tariff structure.
Right.
So
Yeah.
the current tariff structure can pay, it is set in part to pay the revenue debt that's been sold in the past. The carrying capacity of the port might be much higher, but that's going to be passed through directly in the form of tariffs. And that may or may not be acceptable to the community.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Other,
Well, we didn't get all the way to the
That's
report.
what I was
I
afraid
know
of.
the committee's been interested in issues in the past, and for the first time, we have some worth talking about.
yeah,
We mentioned that we don't have any scope changes at this time, and we haven't issued any change orders in this last period. But and I mentioned this at the beginning. We did have a crane criteria meeting with Matson, the new owners of Horizon, on the 23rd of July. In that meeting, we learned that they may be changing their requirements from what we had planned for when we shredded this project last year with Horizon. That could affect the size of the cranes, even the number of the cranes, and the power distribution system that the current cranes and that we expected the new cranes to use. This could have or may not have, depending on whether they confirm this or not, any impact on our plan, particularly for Terminal 1. And we are constrained geometrically. So if things get bigger, longer, for example, that can have ripple effects elsewhere. So this is an issue we're tracking very closely. Matson was to get back to us by the end of this week on a confirmation to this effect, and we're anxious to get that.
We were discussing with them whether they might be willing to provide the cranes.
That is one of the issues that they are looking into. We've certainly expressed our interest that might happen, and that would be an opportunity for a public-private partnership to some degree for them to fund the cranes, provide the cranes even, and those items, items that they need to customize their operation, that would certainly be welcome to the project.
Certainly that decision has to be made pretty quick because it's going to impact the carrying capacity of the docks.
And what the design for the new one will be.
Right. So this is why we go through this preliminary engineering process, frankly, to define the project before we get too far down the line and have a major issue.
And you're saying the decision on that is, or you're going to get some input?
We're going to get
from
some input from them. My understanding was they had a board of directors meeting early this month, and they would be able to report back out of that a little bit more information than what was shared in the July meeting.
And we made it very clear that the rules of engagement have changed since the last time. When we were doing an expansion project, and all you had to do was ask for what you wanted, and it got factored in, and there was no issue with respect to how that was going to be funded.
Yeah.
It's an issue now, and we probably are going to have a line that we can't cross. But if their assistance is to cross it, then we're going to expect that there's going to be some monetary contribution from them to pay for the facility, because we have a requirement to provide this facility to the state on a greater scale than just what their proprietary needs are, and we have to be very judicious about where we draw that line and what it is we can accept as our responsibility going past that.
Are you going to have some input or some information you may want to provide to us by the next meeting, or is that a little optimistic?
Well, again, assuming they can confirm and get back to us as they stated by the end of this week, then we'd have something to share. So we'll keep pushing on that. The last item on the issue log is, like I mentioned, our ship simulation report is finalized. There were a number of recommendations made by the mariners that were summarized in that report, and those recommendations do lead us to acknowledge that there could be a required change in vessel operations, including additional tug assistance. The third tug, we have two, when I say we, Upper Cook Inlet has two here in Anchorage that are available to assist ship berthing and mooring. That third is perceived to be required by the mariners, both during our construction, most importantly during the construction phasing, but even after the final configuration. So that's good information to inform the design moving forward. And as I mentioned before, we will resimulate the facility as the design evolves to continue to track this issue and make sure the resources are brought forward to support the project.
Berthing access and approach has not changed What is changing that might require an?
Well, during the construction phasing, you may remember
I
we're
got
building
you.
terminals
Yeah.
out further adjacent to existing terminals that have to remain. That creates some tighter quarters than.
So you're talking
than-
temporarily?
Well, during the construction phasing, but then again, you are building out, you're changing the existing alignment, you're getting into a little faster current. There's parallel sedimentation and ship modeling that all informs the big picture. So it's too early to have all the answers, but those are things we're watching.
Jennifer?
What's the status or is completion of the, I think it's the Kincaid Shoal study? The shoal study that
Oh,
we,
the Point McKenzie show.
McKenzie
Yeah.
Shoal.
Yeah, this feasibility study was done as step one in the process as to whether or not that shoal was a problem or not. And based on the feasibility study and the research that was done, it was deemed to not be a hindrance to navigation within the Anchorage port area. The time it took to deviate around what was at the time a noticeable shoaling added at most 90 seconds to the vessel arrival time coming into the port. The Corps will tell you it isn't worth investing a dime until you get to 20, 30 minutes of delay caused by having to deviate from a normal navigation path. So recall that the city and the Matsu Borough each went to the legislature for $500,000 to provide the local match to get that feasibility study done. There's money left, and what's being done with that money is NOAA's being paid to monitor that shoal every year to see what's happening to it. I will tell you, in the last 3 years, it's never come up at all. It's gone back to non-event, non-issue status. And nobody talks about it anymore, and that's just the vagaries of Upper Cook Inlet. These kinds of things come and go, and if you get too excited about them in the short run, you spend a lot of money for something that's going to go away on its own anyway, and I think that's where we are with this one. It's a situation that's being monitored. It's had no adverse impact on commercial
further
operations
growth.
at the port, and it's not worth investing any more to do more dredging.
okay, and no further growth. I mean,
No, in fact, it's receded a little bit.
okay, good, thank you.
In the past, yeah, they had a schedule, basically. They'd come out and dredge every.
Well,
so
that's
often.
different. That's the
Yeah, that's-
navigation channel. And
Yeah.
that was taken care of by the Corps over the last 2 years. They've returned that to the minus 38 mean low water depth
Yeah.
that it
Charted.
that it filled in from. And now that, that too is not an issue any longer. And they found out when they did a study of the composition of the material that was shoaling in over there, that the hopper dredge that they bring up every year to do maintenance dredging at the port can be sent out there to do that work when there's no issues for them to work at the docks. So they're getting an extra bang for their buck, and they're doing some good maintenance every year on that shoal as required.
And it's their buck.
And it's their buck.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Thank you.
Other questions? We need to move on and get them in. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Sorry to rush you a little bit, but
See you a little bit.
MOP? Welcome, guys. Just introduction for the record, please.
Mark Johnston, Acting General Manager for MLMP. Eugene Ori, Acting Generation Manager, MLMP.
Barb Walden, IEC consultant.
And I'm just going to turn it over to Eugene to go through the report.
So the rest of you are just here to kind of hold them up.
We're just here to make it look good.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, Assembly members. I'm going to step us through our monthly report to the Oversight Committee. Section 1, nothing has changed contractually with contractual terms of the project. It's still due to be substantially complete June 2016, final completion September 2016. Section 2, safety. Please report that the project remains below both incident rates and lost time injury rates for both Alaska and national averages for industrial projects of this size. So that's a great stat that we hope the contractor maintains. They, I've spoken before that they brought a North Slope safety culture to the project, as well as employ techniques such as inviting OSHA to come do audits, and then when you address the concerns OSHA sees, it is not a fine. So that technique has worked several times. I think they're going to invite them back here soon in the fall. So in a tight site with lots of moving parts, that's a very nice statistic. Section 3, work in progress. The power block building is, for all intents and purposes, complete. Inside, all the underground electrical and piping is complete. Concrete is placed. There's no more concrete going in the building, and about 90% of the equipment is placed on its pads in the building. So building from center out has allowed them to work now above ground and aerially with piping and electrical. There is approximately 150 folks working on site, both inside and around the periphery of the project. So the bullets on plant 1 speak to, or on page 1, speak to what's going on in the building. Top of page 2, the first bullet is the steam turbine is placed. We'll speak more to that in a second. And what has happened now is the contractor has opened up at least 5 work fronts on the periphery of the building. The most visible that one could see when driving out of town is large 25-foot blast walls for the large transformers that are to be placed. Those are in town, the transformers, and also work west towards MLP existing electrical assets. A large 30-foot building with a basement called GIS is being poured, and now structural steel is going up. This is what's going to switch the high voltage power from the power plant as it connects to the existing MLP switchyard. So we're working west. They're also working around the periphery, fire water loop, drains, like electric duct banks that are spidering out. To the south of the main building, there's a big hill that goes up. There will be a 12-foot retaining wall that contractor is starting to build in the back of the plant. And then walking around the southeast of the plant, the gas compressor building is being built. It's one of the major support buildings for the project. In the southeast corner on top of the hill is where Enstar delivers gas to the project. Quanta Price Gregory contractor is now connected up to that Enstar and bringing piping down to the project. I like to look at it this way, that they're building from inside out, and we are now working towards connection of utilities. And when I walk around 360 degrees, southeast corner, we're bringing Enstar down to the project. Up in the northeast corner by the cooling tower, we are bringing deep 15-foot down, 3-foot diameter cooling pipes towards the cooling tower and working our way towards AWW for the heating and cooling of the water, the joint project that AWW and MLP are working together. So that is now within 50 foot of meeting AWW at the road. So about 60% of the way from the plant there. Coming across the north to the west, sewer is leaving the plant, and Starview Drive will be shut down here for about 6 weeks, starting next week, as we the contractor, takes sewer from the plant down Starview Drive, past existing plant 2, and then taps in to existing AWW sewer right at entrance to the Centennial Campground. And then circling counterclockwise back, I spoke to a minute ago, they were bringing the high voltage cables from the project to a switch building, and then ultimately connect to ourselves. And then finally, due south, we are going to be bringing ACS in for outside and leased connections, as well as our own fiber to talk to our own substations and whatnot. So it's a 360 branch out to the utilities. The remaining work outside the project, the main power block building, is roof pavers go on the parapet roof. That has yet to to be done. The roof has been inspected and is good to go. It's just an activity that needs doing. And the large inlet filter houses for the gas turbines need to be placed on the west end of that project building. So they will remobilize a large crane here this fall sometime to place those filter houses. I at a high level spoke to all the detailed bullets going on here, and at this point I will move on. Schedule. Project remains on schedule for June 12, 2016 completion, substantial completion. That's a contractual term that means the utility can receive its 120 megawatts from the plant. It may not be fully built. There's several months of follow-on activities, but the utility can make its power. That's a target that we, through IEC's guidance, have grown concerned about, but Quanta has made strides in reaching that target by increasing their construction progress this summer. I would say that if I was asked, will they meet that target, I would be able to tell you by October, November that they will or won't. But in the last 3 months, they've really ramped up progress. That's to be expected anyway, summertime, but it's yet to see if they're going to make it. They are working, like heck to meet that date, because there's damages beyond that date, pretty stiff, 30 to 45,000 a day. So that continues. Top of the next page, scope changes. There's two main categories of scope changes on the horizon. One spoken here, which is smaller. We're down to small items now. These are additional conduits between us and AWW for communication of additional instrumentation that they would like to see. There's also some additional conduits we need to add in support of the 1% for Arts contractor. And we are in the MOAs in preliminary talks with, or they might even have gone to contract with an artist now. A separate committee has done that review and chosen the artist. I think I spoke to this assembly before, that the north wall of the power block building is the canvas, and it's going to have art painted on it, and they're going to illuminate it with the LED banks of lights that this contractor is going to, that Quanta is providing the conduits. That's what's a scope change there. One I don't have listed is we always envisioned Plant 2A to stand alone with utilities so that we could demo Plant 2 at some point in the future. So we didn't want to extend piping or sewer and connect to Plant 2. We wanted it to stand alone. But what we're finding is it actually makes sense to connect the fire water service from Plant 2A to Plant 2 for purposes of providing increased water pressure to Plant 2. So there'll be a scope change there that's coming.
Dick did have a question.
Question on the art. What's the cost on?
Less than 1%.
3 million.
It's 1% of the office building. It's approximately 300,000, and it is paid for by us. And separately with the Quanta contract, we have encumbered some 50,000 with the contract with our contractor to support whatever that might be. Maybe there was a statue or a waterfall out on the street and they would want to illuminate it or provide water. We didn't know what it would be at the time, so we encumbered a retainage with Quanta 50,000. So these conduits and these electrical changes are a little bit more than that, so that's why we're going to be bringing it forth.
Visible from the highway, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, is there a fund to maintain the art?
That is a good question.
Because usually there isn't, and I want to make sure there is.
Correct. That is the main concern. I guess the MOA has been burned in the past. The committee, both at the choosing level, when the various proposals came in, it was an international artist call. So I was only on that committee to make sure that it was maintainable and would work. And the answer is yes. So the artist they chose has a track record of murals and painting on existing assets with the understanding of the epoxy type paints and the long-term aspects of UV degradation and whatnot. So we are working with that contractor for that because we understand we'll be stuck with the maintenance.
Would you just, one last thing, would you make sure they understand we're an Arctic environment up here?
Yes.
Because sometimes what I see artists in Lower 48 doing gets destroyed when it's in our environment up here in the wintertime.
Yeah.
It seems to me, doesn't the commission, the Arts Commission or somebody, don't they have a fund that we may have to contribute to, but to do that? Because we had a problem.
No,
way
they
back.
don't.
I believe, well, I can't speak
don't
to that.
have
But anyway, I thought there was percentage. But
Thank you.
if there's an opportunity to do that, Dick's absolutely right. We have had nightmares for art go bad and can't be repaired or.
Can't figure out what it is when it's done.
Melvin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as we all know, 1% for art is a requirement. But, so it's only required for the admin part, building, and not the rest of it?
Yeah. Do you know the requirements in detail?
Yeah, typically it's 1% of the entire construction project.
That's what I thought.
But as an industrial plant, we had early on worked with the arts group, and they restricted it to the public side, which would be the admin section of the building. So we scaled that back to a $250,000 limit on the 1% for the art. It only applied to the public portion of the facility and not the entire facility.
Okay.
There's no way to put art inside the power block.
No, if I can follow up, Mr. Chairman, that
Yes.
makes sense, because, the whole facility, that's $3 million for art, and I think it's a wonderful thing, and it is a requirement, but I'm glad that it's just for the admin building, for this particular project. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so that's the only known upcoming scope changes. So let's go to section 6, review and change orders. Change orders 1 through 6 have been processed in the past. Since the last time we met, change order 7 has now been processed through administration. And this includes the build out of the basement, HVAC and living CO type fire controls and whatever for occupancy, as well as AWW requested changes to the sewer tie-in way out the west, 2,000 feet to the west of the project. So that's where we're at with total changes on the project right now. Again, I'll give it to Bart for budget review.
Okay, morning.
Morning.
So we have a little bit of activity has occurred from the last time, so I'm going to spend just a couple minutes going over the commitment column. You'll notice that the Quanta Power, that $201 million has gone up. That's because we have just processed change order 7, so that was an increase of $613,000. If you also look at the projected column, this is the number, this is the internal number that we are monitoring ourselves against, and this is what you'll see now that we're over projection. That is not an over projection. It is today because we're continuing to add to the current contract, but we have about $4 million in reimbursables inside that contract that we will be netting out, but we won't be doing that until probably the spring of next year. Those monies were set aside for FF&E, which is the furniture, fixtures, and equipment, and we also had a spare parts budget in there. Those items will be purchased directly by ML&P and put into the warehouse, so it will not apply to the construction budget. So those items will eventually come out, and then our actual contract value to Quanta will drop by that $3 or $4 million. So actual incurred for Quanta, this is the $131 million. This is payment through June. So we're about 65% spent. We're about 62% built out on the project. The GE contract We're on target, on budget. This is another contract that there were parts to the tune of about 3.6 million that will be coming out of this contract as well. Again, that won't happen until the spring. IEC contract currently committed at 11.4, our projection of 12.4. Our actual incurred to date is through June of 9.6 million. This contract we knew was going to be in a little bit of trouble. Our testing and inspection services became much more expensive than we anticipated early on, a couple of years back. The contractor also is doing a lot more field welding than we anticipated. We thought a lot of that would be done out of state and shipped up. They opted not to do that and to do almost all of their welding locally. So we have 100% inspection and x-ray on those welds. So we're anticipating about $1 million or 1.5 million, but we are going to wait till this fall to get a better picture of this, see where we're at, and then we will need to come back to the assembly to increase this contract. So that you'll probably see that coming through in the fall. Builder's risk is paid up. AFUDC continues to be very attractive to us. As you will see, originally we were estimating this at 28 million. We are currently sitting at about 4.4 million. That is through mid-June. And the AMG is similar, not nearly as noticeable, but so we're at 1.9 on that. Our other expenses are current as of yesterday. These are the numbers that are actually reported and posted in and out of PeopleSoft. The other expenses is primarily internal cost and small contract costs that aren't captured inside these big contracts. And so that just continues to move up. Our infrastructure projects, those were the ancillary projects that ML&P has to do to hook up to the contractor. We are currently at about 112,000 out of the 3.1 million that we estimated there. So things are moving along fine. So currently we have commitments of 308 million. Actual incurred at 201, so we're right at 65%. Moving down to the change orders, you'll see the executed number. This changed from last month. We're now at 1.459. We were at 845 before. That's the 613,000 moved in for change order 7. Our project budget summary. The budget is still at 314 million. Our actual is at 201. We are still projecting that we will have this project in at 300 or less. So we are still in good shape overall. And then our project funding has not changed, and our change order summary now moves up to include change order 7. So overall, financially, the project is tracking very well and very close to our projections, and still they're good numbers here.
Questions from the group? I guess my concern is are you having to do extra work with regards to a connection to AWWU? I know AWWU is upgrading the water line as a portion of the project for the interchange down on Muldoon Road. And I'm just wondering, are there any sizing issues or any connection issues with regards to
with the ADOT project for the Muldoon interchange? It doesn't affect us
because it's further.
We're actually working right off of the ERS station, the Energy Recovery Station up there, and that was all in our original design.
But you are extending the sewer line to Plant 2.
And that is outside the bounds of the interchange project.
Yeah.
It's up at the turn of Starview by the park, and we are hearing noise of ADOT trying to have others pay, cost payer type thing, and they see Price regularly squatting on the park right now, and so they're saying, hey, maybe they can pay. So there's some noise about that, but we're keeping it separate, and yeah, we have the Parks and Rec or MOA has a separate contract with Price Gregory that they're going to improve that parkland when they're done. But we're watching that.
Well, you've set the standard in terms of interdepartmental cooperation on this big project. Other comments by folks? We did have a request to look at or have a little presentation on tower or placement on poles on ML&P poles.
I was just gonna say,
Do we have that? Amy?
Mr. Still, I'm glad you brought that up. That actually presentation did happen at the Community and Economic Development Committee.
Yeah. And
So Jake from ML&P came to our committee meeting and had a great, gave us a great, quick little overview of what ML&P is doing regarding cell towers, I think is what you're talking about. So that did happen at our committee. And essentially what he said is it's a relatively new, GCI is the first basically carrier that they've entered into this type of agreement with. And I think there was 2 potential sites. One of them, obviously, I think, did he say it got shut down at PNC?
14th and something.
Yeah, that one was a little controversial, but they did bring it up, but it's essentially a new topic that MLP is dealing with, but GCI was the first carrier. Jake, you want to fill in the gaps?
The other problem you mentioned is undergrounding. Because if you put the cell tower on top of the pole and you underground it, it doesn't work anymore. So that's going to be a problem, is they're undergrounding, trying to figure out where the underground, because we've got requirements on the underground. What does that do to the telephone lines?
It certainly establishes a priority to what you would keep and what you wouldn't.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. They have projected 5 years in advance of areas that they're going to be doing the undergrounding. And so obviously if GCI was wanting to put a cell tower on top of some of their poles, and those were scheduled to be underground, they would inform them, and they probably have to choose someone else.
Jennifer?
Since we're off topic
We are.
and talking about undergrounding, it's my understanding when poles are undergrounded that if it's ML&P comes in with their crew, whoever, usually it's ACS comes in with their crew, GCI comes in with their crew. Is there ever a way that a contract can go out to the undergrounding that all 3, there's one project management? I mean, how did we get to this point that we have 3 different crews coming to underground the same system?
We do offer joint trenching where we dig the trench and it has the capability to accommodate the other utilities. The other utilities do not always choose to do it at the same time that we do, and of course we can't force them to do it. Once we remove our lines off of the pole, then whoever's highest on the pole, it becomes their pole and their responsibility to maintain it. Obviously, I think you are correct, it would be much better if we could get everybody to put their equipment in the ground at the same time, but it doesn't always happen. And I believe there was an enterprise committee meeting that it was discussed at, and from the telephone utilities perspective, they believe that they only have so much money and they will do it based on what is best for them.
But then they don't have any obligation to take the pole out is the problem, or they don't think they do. And so the neighborhood's left with an empty pole. And it just creates a nightmare for the homeowner in terms of access and disruption and so on and so forth. So it is still, and we had that discussion, it still is a continuing problem. They're having it down in the Arctic area this year. So it is still an issue, and I don't know how we get to. I can understand the other utilities don't want to be driven by ML&P's schedule. They want to do their own schedule when they can do it, but it's a nightmare for the homeowner. So.
But I'm just, because I've been aware of this for quite some time, and sort of fascinated how you could, it's not something we can address in code per se, but I mean, they're all regulatory, they're all RCA driven, it's all a capital cost. I just would be interested in any thoughts as far as addressing this. Because I'm not sure if you could.
We're doing what we can to try and make it as easy as possible for the telephone utilities. They believe that because they are in a competitive market, whereas we have a regulated service territory, that it doesn't always benefit them to put their lines underground is the issue. And I think at that meeting they mentioned that in a particular neighborhood they may only have 10 customers, and to spend the money to put all the lines underground, they don't believe that they can recover the costs.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I just wanted to make one comment, because the code, at least it's my understanding, the code requires that they underground, period. But the stipulation is whether it also gives them an out based on whether or not they think they can afford it. But I really think we need to revisit the code on that subject matter, because Mr. Trainey and I, and I'm sure some of our colleagues here had similar issues, but in our district, I think it was last year, MLMP did the undergrounding, GCI and ACS wouldn't. We had work sessions on the subject matter. GCS finally decided, yeah, we'll do it, and ACS still hasn't done it. This is Noreen. So we need to revisit the code, and I just want to put that out there. So,
I think
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think in the code, doesn't it incentivizes, there's basically a levy on the utility rate for the undergrounding. So, but that's just in the electrical, it's not in the other.
2% of the bill,
Surcharge
yeah.
is the opportunity is there to surcharge the customer.
That's right.
And the telecommunications carriers, because they're competitive, they choose not to levy that surcharge, and so the funds that they are required to expend have to come from them, and so they keep right to the minimum.
Amy, we need to wind this up. So.
We'll
Thank
go
you,
to
Mr. Chair. Ms. Gray Jackson, I will absolutely add that to the title or to the committee tickler list
Thank you.
of items to evaluate.
Thank you.
Mr. Trainey gave me one this morning too, so we'll add those. But I just wanted to say off of the utility pole issue, I want to go back to the Plant 2A expansion and just say, and I know I said this a couple times, people don't hear it enough from me, so I'm working on that.
Oh, yeah,
But
that's gonna be
I want to say that yet again, I am thrilled with the presentation and the management. It blows my mind, $300 million project. You guys make it look like it runs so smoothly. And I know you've gotten lucky a couple times with the weather and other things. I recognize we can't judge each project. It's apples and oranges. When we look at the port and we look at MLMP, and I think everyone is really excelling and doing well. But when I look at this project, this is how we should measure municipal projects. I think you guys have done a great
SAP
job.
project.
Yeah, you want to take a look at the SAP project? No, yeah. No, you guys you're doing a great job, and I just want to say thank you. These updates really do help us, and to hear the issues before, just like Todd pointed out in the other one, when we hear them ahead of time and we're not blindsided, it really does give us the opportunity to process and to not feel blindsided. So, we appreciate that, Todd, and we do appreciate it when issues come up. And thank you.
Mr. Abbott, anything for the good of the cause?
No, sir.
Okay, anybody else?